The better question is like, where are we not trying to leverage AI? I think fundamentally the way we think about it is like every technology company today is now an AI company. And if that's not the lens by
Yeah.
which you view your business, you're going to be out of business. Look, everything we develop now, we're vibe coding. We used to design everything and then go from design to user testing of the designs to prototyping to building. Now we go just straight to the prototype.
Hi, Adam Gower here, founder of GowerCrowd.com and host of this podcast and YouTube series, AI for CRE Pros. Thank you for joining me today. My guest is Michael Mandel, who is co-founder and CEO of CompStak. CompStak is the leading commercial real estate data and analytics platform, and they crowdsource millions of verified lease, sale, and property transactions for brokers and investors and other users. It is fascinating. I had no idea that they were a crowdsourcing platform, actually. Michael talks about it a little bit right at the beginning of our conversation, so check that out. It's really interesting what their model is for getting this data. Of course, they are integrating AI into their platform, and in the demo today, you're going to see exactly how they are doing that and how you can benefit from tapping into the myriad resources that CompStak have. Of course, if you are listening to this podcast, I do recommend that you go to the Gower Crowd website, hit the podcast button at the top and find today's podcast. It is better to watch on video. And so I have a link to the video on that page. So you can watch it right there. You can stream it directly, or if you want, you can also go to YouTube. Just look up Gower Crowd there and you'll find it on YouTube as well. Definitely better to be watching because it is a demo and you want to see what Michael is doing on screen. And while you're on the Gower Crowd website, please go ahead and subscribe to our newsletter. We are providing actionable, tangible, real life tactics and uses of AI, both LLMs and also of companies like Michael's, like CompStak, that you can actually use, that are practical, immediately actionable use cases for you so you can get ahead in this incredibly fascinating world of AI as it develops as quickly as it is. All there at gowercrowd.com. You can always unsubscribe. All right, let's move on. Michael Mandel, founder and CEO of CompStak, coming right up. Michael, what a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's start right at the very top. Please introduce yourself, introduce your company, and high level, what does your AI do? What is your AI solution?
Sure. I'm Michael Mandel. I'm co-founder and CEO of CompStak. And CompStak is first and foremost a commercial real estate data company. We're also a tech company. We're also an AI company, but data is the lifeblood of what we do. What we do ultimately is we actually crowdsource commercial real estate data. So we have a network of, at this point, close to 50,000 commercial real estate brokers, appraisers, and research people in brokerage firms who share data on CompStak. They earn credits for sharing that data, which is like a virtual currency. And they can use those credits to get other data back out of CompStak. And as a result of these people sharing data, we end up with a comprehensive database made up of this, really hard to find, information that's in the industry, but just not easily accessible. The data that they share are lease comps, sales comps, and property data primarily. And then we supplement that with additional information like loan information and public record data around sales transactions, CMBS data. And then we have an analytics layer that sits on top of it. And then, of course, a lot of different tools, that several of which incorporate, AI in them and continue to become more, enabled through, AI functionality every day.
Okay, so we're going to be doing a demo. for the AI side. I'm on your website now, comstat.com/AI with a book a demo on there. What are the high level again? What does how are you integrating AI? What are we going to be seeing here? High level. What is the challenge that is being addressed?
Sure. Well, look, I mean, we've been using AI in some capacities for many years, and so there's old school AI. There's things like machine learning and OCR, and there's deep learning and different applications like that, which we've used for a long time. And then there's what most people think of AI today, which often is related to LLMs, and related technologies like that, and MCPs and integrations of those data into platforms where you can ask questions and get answers. And so we've integrated some of that as well. And I can speak to kind of the gamut of it, but broadly speaking, the way that we think about using AI is around the way that we make sense of our data, clean up our data, normalize. A lot of it is on the back end. So, for instance, CompStack brings in thousands of comps every day, lease comps and sales comps primarily, that come in from our members. And we take this data in whatever format people want to give it to us. Could be Word documents, PDFs, scanned PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, could be in the body of an email. We've had people mail us comps in the USPS, in the mail, and we always would pride ourselves in the fact that we would take this data in any format that people give us, and we will get it into the system and normalize this data and make sure that it's high quality. And for the longest time, we always had some level of automation in it, but a lot of it was also manual. A team of people manually entering this information, particularly like scanned PDFs, were always challenging, even for OCRs, optical character recognition, because the visual remnants created by scanning a document would make it difficult for it to interpret those documents. And document abstraction more broadly in the past was challenging because the formats had to be consistent and trained around consistent formats to find data easily. Inconsistent formats and when you have a huge variety of data formats that weren't properly trained for old school AI, were not easy to deal with. So one non-obvious way that we leverage AI to our users is that now we can just bring in any data that people send us, and we can use document abstraction to get that data out very easily, which reduces the amount of time that our team has to take to load this data by about 50%. We still have a heavy human in the loop model, actually, where to make sure our data is highly validated, and there's other things we do as well that are automated leveraging AI, but that's one example. But that's not one that I can easily demo unless I start showing you our backend systems, which I won't do today.
No, that's fine. What I'm interested in is, okay, so you've described
the front end stuff, yes,
how you pass data, which is absolutely fascinating, and that you're able to deal with scanned documents. I mean, that's it's definitely the hardest. But from a user perspective, when they get into CompStack and they start using your AI feature, and we're going to be seeing it in a minute, who is the product built for?
Well, we've got two sides to the CompStack platform. So we've got CompStack Exchange, where brokers, appraisers, and research people within brokerage firms share data to get other data out. So we're built for them. And then we have CompStack One, where we sell subscription access to our data to commercial real estate investors, lenders, asset managers, government, and consultants, and all sorts of different kinds of clients, tax appeal firms and assessors' offices, what have you. So mostly institutional players on that side of the business. Some of the world's largest names, I can't name all of them, but like the Blackstones and the Morgan Stanleys of the world. But we sell into government, like the Federal Reserve and the city of Anchorage, Alaska, as a client. So it kind of runs the gamut. But they use our data to make real estate investment decisions, to make lending decisions, to do asset management, to assess taxes, to appeal taxes, to do consulting engagements on behalf of clients, to set economic policy. Kind of runs the gamut.
So how are people solving these problems today, typically, that you're solving with your with your platform?
From a strictly from a data perspective or an AI perspective or both?
Yeah, instead of using AI, what is the problem that you are solving specifically that people find have a different mode of resolving today? And what is that mode?
Sure. Well, look, at the end of the day, it's about making decisions and making informed decisions based off of data. So first, the step one is having access to the data.
Mhm.
That's like core CompStack. That's about getting, making accessible data that is otherwise very hard to find and very hard to, get your hands on to be able to make these decisions. And the methodology around crowdsourcing allows us to bring to bear this data that is otherwise hard to come by. You might, effectively get it, if you're a broker, you get it by trading with other brokers and hoping that you're getting a complete picture. If you're an investor, you might get it by calling brokers and asking them to send you some comps on a deal you're working on. So the first part is getting that market data. The second part of it, which is where AI comes in, more so, is around, how do you make sense of that data and make decisions based off of that data? It's like, okay, I've got, you know, 30 comps for similar properties to the one that I'm underwriting. How should I decide what rents I put in my DCF model, to um, to underwrite this acquisition, right? And that's where AI can be really helpful in helping to make sense of the data and provide insight from that data. Um, and the other, but it also helps as well as identifying and finding the right data as well, because we've moved on from people necessarily filtering through every single piece of the information and actually just saying, hey, give me the right data for what I'm doing, and just getting that answer immediately, so it speeds up that time as well.
In terms of the workflow, then is this primarily used at the acquisition stage or the sales stage, if you like? That when people come in, they're
That's
looking to do, they're looking to
that
buy or sell.
That's one of the key use cases. If you're a real estate investor, yes, you'd use it in acquisitions and dispositions, but you would
Mm.
also use it in asset management. A key use case is benchmarking the performance of your assets, against the market. And I would say, like, one of the biggest growth areas for us on the AI side is in that area, in that, both through a portfolios tool that we've built, but then also through our APIs and MCP servers, because what we have is our large institutional players, who are some of the world's largest private equity funds, banks, sovereign wealth funds, insurance companies. They have like a two-step process for leveraging AI. Step one is like, get all of my data into a data lake, make sense of my internal data, try to get some insight on what's happening with my portfolio of assets and loans, right?
Hmm.
And step two is, okay, now I know what's going on with my portfolio, but is that good or bad? Am I outperforming or underperforming the market? How do I benchmark that performance? And so that's where we come into play, where they might have some internal tooling that they've built, and maybe they've built an internal chatbot where they can ask a question about their portfolio, but they have no context. They can pull in our MCPs and have it actually give an answer to their asset managers and say, you're getting an average of $55 per square foot for your, Class A office buildings in Dallas, but you're actually underperforming similar assets by 15%. And you're giving the average concession packages that are, 18% higher, things
Hmm.
like that, right? And so they can just get that insight from Comstack and pull it in to get those answers. So we've taken like a two-pronged approach to AI, which is like, one, let's build out tools for the average everyday user to be able to use Comstack better. And two, let's enable the really big enterprise power users, massive organizations to be able to, internally leverage our data to make better decisions with all the other infrastructure that they're building.
Okay, so you've described the mega users, right? The super users, the institutional users. Who is the typical user that comes to, or is that the typical user on a
On
Comstat?
the Comstack one side of our business, very often it is. But it runs the gamut. We have small, private equity funds, individual investors, family investors,
Mm.
it really runs the gamut. And then on the exchange side of our business, where it's brokers from massive brokerage firms like the JLLs and CBREs and Cushman and Wakefields of the world, and
Hmm.
there's one person brokerage shops that are trading data too. And in many ways, like we help kind of level the playing field for those guys, because they get access to the same kind of resources that some of the big players have.
Sweet. All right. So you want to do a demo? As
Sure,
you set this
absolutely.
up and screen share with me, if you can multitask, tell me what would you like viewers to be paying particular attention to? Is there anything in particular that you want them to focus on in terms of the benefits of what they're going to get out of this? Please go ahead and screen share.
I'll try to, yeah, I'll try to highlight it as we go along,
Okay, sounds good.
and point out kind of where I see the benefits here.
Okay,
So
so
let
for
me put
anybody
this
who is
in.
listening to this podcast, I do recommend that you go to gowercrowd.com, find the podcast page. It's up there on the menu at the top of the website under podcasts. Obviously, look for the CompStack podcast, and there's a video there. You can watch the video of what Michael is doing right now. Go ahead. We see a map of the United States of America. Fire away.
Yeah, right now we're on the properties page, and there's like 4.3 million or so properties. Um, then we've got the sales transaction page with 2.6 million sales comps, and then we've got the leases here, and we've got 1.3 million in change lease comps. This is where most people live to find data or have historically, but I'm going to focus on the AI enabled tools, and I'm going to skip over to Comp Scout to start.
Okay.
So Comp Scout is a platform where you can just ask questions and have it return data, that helps support what you want to do. And I'll use my favorite, example here, and I'm gonna just say, show me fried chicken restaurants in New York City and Boston,
Okay.
and how rents are trending for those.
Okay. And what asset, while this loads, what asset classes do you cover?
For our lease transaction data, we cover office, industrial, and retail. And
Hmm.
for sales transactions, we cover everything but single family homes.
Okay. So
Really
that's
runs the
sales
gamut.
transactions. So, and I know this is going to sound like a wacky question, but mobile home parks,
And if there's a sales transaction for it, yeah, we
you
would we
have
would
it.
have them.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
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 All right.
I wouldn't say
Okay.
that's our sweet spot, but
Well,
for
I was
sure.
actually,
Yeah.
while we're waiting for this to load, I was actually talking to a startup yesterday that specializes in their whole platform is super niche. They've been extremely well financed by some big names. I think I mentioned to you the CEO of Zoom or something. And they specialize in mobile home parks, marinas, and campgrounds. That's what they specialize. Well, I came up
Wow.
with these. I don't know. It's like three of them everywhere. All right, so we got the screen up.
Okay.
Fire away. What do we got?
Yes. So, so first of all, what it's doing is it says, I understand you're asking about fried chicken restaurants in New York City and Boston, how rents have been trending. It gives you the weighted average starting rent for these leases and how it's increased over the past 30 years, rising
Mm,
from $25 per square foot in 1996 to $124 in 2026. 396% growth, blah, 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 blah. The Now, then it gives you the methodology. How did it find this data? And
mm,
the key thing to understand with the methodology is that this is leveraging a combination of LLM as well as Comstack's traditional search and filtering methodology. And it knows when to use which, right? Because when you're
mm,
dealing with an LLM, you have the risk of dealing with some level of hallucination, and you also can't necessarily predict the consistent result. But our Comstack filters are designed to provide you the same result every time. And so it's going to lean on our filters where possible, but it's also going to leverage, AI in areas where we can't do it. Now, a great example of where Comstack couldn't give you a result without an LLM is fried chicken, right? We have
mm.
1.5 million leases in Comstack. In order to know that a lease is a fried chicken restaurant, we would need to have our analysts go through and label every single lease as to whether, and every single tenant as to whether this tenant is a fried chicken tenant or not, which is a ridiculous expectation, right? And
Mm.
so what we're doing here is we are sending every tenant record in CompStack up against an LLM and and asking the LLM which of these are fried chicken or not, and then it identifies that, and so now we've got a list of tenants that are fried chicken.
Michael, let me
You
ask you
know,
something. How confident, or how can you be confident that the process that you've run here is one, accurate, and two, complete?
well, there's no in the world of sort of LLMs. There's no perfection,
Mhm.
and so I don't think that's a realistic expectation. I don't think that's
Mm.
an expectation that our users have. They know that like it's going to be pretty accurate, but I think that like there's what's the alternative, right? I don't know as a user what
Mm.
the name of every fried chicken restaurant on the planet is to cross reference it and find out. This gives
Mm.
me directionally a really great idea. You can then
Mm.
go through the CompStack data and find other ways to filter and search through the data
Mm.
if your own way. But I think that like, you know, this is going to empower you in a great way. Whether it's perfect, I can't tell you, but we do
Okay.
QA it, right? So like if our,
Mm.
we actually watch every session that our users have. We check to see,
Mm.
are people finding what they're looking for? And if they don't, our data science team is then going in and trying to debug it and improve it. So it's getting better every day.
Beautiful.
Um, but what you can see here is that it's knowing which of these are fried chicken. You'll notice that like some
Mm.
of these, like Boston Market and Popeyes,
Mhm.
they don't have, or chicken and ribs. They don't have the words fried chicken in the name, and yet it
Mhm.
knows. Um,
Okay.
and it's using Comstack's market definitions to choose, only the data for New York City, and Boston and in the Boston market.
Mhm.
And then it's giving you, it's giving you this analysis to understand how rents are trending for those. And one thing I'll point out about this tool is that, unlike, a ChatGPT response, which would just give you this as like a string of text that you need to deal with and format on your own,
Mhm.
um, this is giving to you this in a nice tabular fashion, like you're used to seeing on Comstack or our users are used to seeing. It also allows you to, click into these particular leases and
Mm.
actually see the detail in the same way that you'd see this on Comstack. So it's kind of offering the best of both worlds, and for our users, because like trying to show all of this data in a
Mm.
normal like ChatGPT like environment would be overwhelming and hard to manage, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then our users can, select the ones that they think are most relevant to what they're working on. They
Mhm.
could put this into a folder, and then I can save that folder and come back to it later and continue to add, curate for a particular engagement that I'm working on. I can also export this data into Excel or put it in a PDF,
Okay.
things like that. But the key thing here is it's giving you insight off of the data, and it's giving you the
Mm.
specific results to support that insight.
Okay. And typically, so this is the least comp search that we're looking at, right? The comp scout.
Well, this is Comp Scout. This is leveraging our least comp data to give you a
Mhm.
result. Yes,
And so
but
the
it's not our
primary
core least comp search. Yeah.
the primary use of AI here is analyzing the data that you already have and pulling out based on a prompted search from a user.
Yeah, it's providing you the insights. So, it's being able to address semantic questions, and versus very very specific ones, and being able to also be able to query the data in ways that you wouldn't otherwise be able to query it on
All
Comstack.
right, so let's talk about that. How are you seeing people using this interface here? I mean, you showed us a very simple one. Show us, fried chicken in Boston. But how
Yeah.
else are people using it? Give me some case studies so folk can understand. Uh, if they were to get in here, how they can extract value.
Yeah, I think, the most common thing that we see are people wanting to understand trends.
Hmm.
So a lot of questions around like,
Hmm.
tell me about, how grocery anchored retail rents are trending, in for, markets on, in these kind of cities, or tell me about how rents are trending for class A office. A lot of like people are looking for insight more generally, I would say.
Hmm. And that's the kind of question that they ask, is it? Like how are
Yeah.
rents? trending. And then how do they
Yeah.
use it? So the way that they use it here is that they would export it to an Excel and then take it home and study it, right? Or is there some extra layer of analytics that Comstack offers, or is it really primarily an information sorting and providing platform?
Once you have this data in a folder, like I mentioned,
Mm.
right, you can do a lot with it. So, for instance, like
Yeah.
we have our chart builder tool. This wasn't, I wouldn't call this necessarily AI, but I could send that folder of comps
Mm.
into chart builder and I can create a trend line for it and I could benchmark it against other comps. So in this case, I'm looking at starting rents in San Francisco against starting rents for Los Angeles. And, I can see that trending over time. But I could, for instance, take those fried chicken comps and I could say, okay, let's see how fried chicken comps are trending over the last, 15 years against, you know, um, average restaurant comps or retail comps or whatever the case may be. So that's one example of where you could use this data. Obviously, there's a lot you can do on Comstack that goes well beyond strictly what's in these AI tools, but that's one example. If I were wanted to leverage that data in more detail, you can create PDF reports and share those with your clients or your partners.
You can do that on
Certainly,
Comstack, can you? You can create a
yes.
PDF. Let's have a look at that. And while you're going
Oh,
there,
sure.
how did you? So this is a very cool page here. So we're looking at a 3-month moving average of chicken restaurants in Boston and New York
Well,
City
in this
area.
case, I'm not looking at chicken restaurants, but I
You
could
went
add them
somewhere else.
in.
Yeah, you did something
Yes,
else.
but I could add a data set here, and
I see. And then do it.
I could choose a data set. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. But so the question I have here is before you used AI to identify from that 1.3 million or however many leases that you've got in there, how did you compile data like this? Was this something, how do you do this? I mean, you mentioned that AI is what is finding the, fried chicken, uh, 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 outlet, that would otherwise have been a manual tagging process. So how did you
hmm
create those charts before AI? Was it manually tagged?
Yeah. A lot of it's manually tagged, and some of it just
Mm,
wasn't possible. So, like, I could
mm,
type in KFC here into this search bar, and this will find every KFC, um,
mm,
restaurant that we have comps for in Compstack. But for instance, if I,
mm.
if one of them was Kentucky Fried Chicken and not KFC, that would might be a different search if they weren't normalized together, whereas the LLM knows that they're the same. And I might have to type in every one of the fried chicken restaurants that I know about to get the results here versus having to consolidate them all together. Or maybe I would choose that I wanted to, space type retail, and then I might do a space subtype of restaurant, or I could do fast casual or fast food, quick service, and that might help me get a sense of what could be fried chicken restaurants, but maybe isn't fried chicken restaurants, right? Um, so I could analyze the data that way. Look, I think that like at the end of the day, um, any AI tool is only as powerful as the underlying data. So our data is very clean. We've spent, 14 years making sure our data is clean and normalized. And we can also use AI to improve the cleanliness and the normalization. But if you throw, a chatbot, or an LLM on top of crappy data, you're likely to get crappy results.
Yeah, exactly. So can you say that, so would it be fair to say that thanks to AI and your application of AI, the results that you generate, for example, looking at that trend line chart, are more complete and more accurate than they have been historically?
Accuracy is a tough word to use.
Mm.
I would
More
say
complete. Mm.
probably more complete. Yes, yeah, I would say so. In
And
that particular case, more complete. Yes.
and are there any other ways of for users on the platform to interact with the chatbot or other ways that do leverage AI in different
Yeah,
ways than you've shown us?
sure. Yeah. So let me. Um, I'm just going to choose the New York City market here, although we don't have to. We could go national.
Mhm.
And I'll put in a building. Let's do the
Okay.
Spiral, which is a big office building in the Hudson Yards in Manhattan.
Hmm.
And so so now I've got the profile for this property. And one of the ways that well, there's several ways we're leveraging AI in sort of the analysis of this property where, and we give you an estimation, for instance, that leverages AI on where the estimated starting rents should be today for this property, starting rents and net effective rents. And that takes into account, what's been happening in similar buildings, nearby this property and similar spaces, reflecting into that, regardless of whether there's been a recent deal in the building. And then one of the features we just added, if I go into the leases for this property and I choose, this one here, Tri-Edge Investments, this lease was signed in October 2025. We have all the details on this actual lease, but then we have Comstack's estimation of where we believe the rent would be today if you were to lease this space today. And we can go through these, and we have these estimations on each of these, particular comps, and we get into details of where we estimate the rent should be. So that's a clear example where, we can help you benchmark. Actually a great example would be to go look at like an older deal where,
Mhm.
this lease here was signed. This was Pfizer. They were the anchor tenant in this building when this building opened. And so the starting rent was $99 a foot. We estimate that if they were to lease that today, it would be $112 a foot. Now that's actually lower than on average for that building, because Pfizer has some of the lower floors of the building, and because when you have a really large lease, you have more leverage as a tenant, so that brings down your rent. And all of that is accounted for in our estimation of the starting rent today. And so if you're a real estate investor and you're looking at the rent roll for the building, you can actually estimate for this all the space that's vacant or that will be vacant. Comstack will tell you specifically for that space where we think the rent should be, to help you, build out your model.
Wow, that's fascinating. And occupancy as well. So you have, so when I think of Argus, I think of likelihood to renew and all kinds of other criteria that they have in there. But do you look at a projected occupancy as well and apply any kind of estimate? Like if Pfizer moved out, how long is it going to take us to lease this thing? And
We don't
260,000 square
we
feet is ginormous.
Yeah, yeah. We don't do estimated time for lease up, because we get our deals after they've been signed. So we don't
Mm.
necessarily know how long they were on the market.
Mm.
And one thing about Comstack is we are a data company. We take data integrity very, very seriously. And while we will make estimations, we're reluctant to estimate anything unless we have extremely high confidence in it.
I see.
So if we have the data to support something like that, then we'll make an estimation. If not, we won't.
Okay, and in what way is this the screen that we're looking at here? This is the AI generated. That's this estimated starting rent today. That's
Yeah,
where,
that's a key one. And then
yeah.
and the next iteration of this will allow you to actually see all of the supporting. So this is based off of 287 comps.
Hmm.
You actually, and they're weighted like so. So the ones that are most similar will be at the top, and the ones that are less similar at the bottom. The next iteration of this tool will allow you to actually pick and choose and remove ones that you think don't support this.
Oh.
What the assumption, and it'll update the results for you. Um,
Like
so
anomalies, for example. Sometimes you have anomalies that you just kind of want to kick out of your set. Mm.
Exactly. And so it'll allow the users to do that, and it'll update the
Mm.
calculation for that.
Mm.
The other thing I'll show you on this property, you know, oh,
You stop
oh,
sharing.
oh no, my browser crashed. I had
No, that's
you
right.
would you wouldn't believe how many Chrome windows I had open at once, which is
Oh no.
probably
All right, restore all. Just hit the
uh,
restore all when it comes
prob
back.
oh, it's going to be problematic. I should have closed them all before I jumped on with you. You'll have to give me a second here.
Sure, yeah, yeah. All right. So while you're continuing to show us this, what I'd like, if there are any other uses like that are directly AI. I mean, you're putting a lot of investment into AI, presumably. Where's that money going? What are you focusing on? Where are the trends for that for Comstack that you're looking to leverage going forwards as you pull up the screen?
I mean, it's the better question is like, where are we not trying to leverage AI? I think fundamentally the way we think about it is like every technology company today is now an AI company, and if that's not the lens by
Yeah.
which you view your business, you're going to be out of business.
Mm.
So, look, everything we develop now, we're vibe coding. We used to design everything and then go from design you know um, to user testing of the designs to prototyping to building. Now we go just straight to the prototype, and vibe code it. Our designers are now coders, you know. Um,
Let's
the
just clarify what
tooling,
that means. Let me clarify what that means. When you say vibe coding, basically what you mean is that your designers in the past would design something, send it off to a tech team. Now what they're able to do is to use natural language to do the coding and to build what it is you want. Is that correct? That's what you mean by vibe coding, basically?
yeah, yeah, effectively, like they would design something in like Figma, right? And
Mm,
then might test those designs with a user. They build like maybe they walk them through a sample use case on that, and then based off that feedback, actually build a functional prototype. But now they go straight to functional prototype and skip those steps, and then you can test the prototype with users instead of testing a conceptual design, of that prototype.
So, what kind of uses when you say there's nothing you're not working on? What would be the highest priorities with AI for you? Yeah.
You know, I'll be honest. I don't, we don't, I think that it's foolish to say, here's my AI priority. That's not
Mm.
the way that we think about it. We think
Hmm.
about who are our user personas, what's how, what that we want to focus on, and let's build the optimal products for them.
Mm.
And those products will naturally include AI. But like, I think that chasing a trend of, oh, I'm going to build this AI thing is ass backwards. Like it's
Mm.
the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah.
You say, what does my user need? And
Mm.
and actually this speaks, Adam, to what you and I were chatting with before we started recording, which
Mm.
is like, the AI founder building technology versus the real estate professional building a real estate technology company. Like, I'm not focused on building whiz bang technology. I'm focused on meeting the needs of our clients and our prospective clients. And I
Mm.
will use AI to support that
Mm.
when that's the best, tool for the job. And I won't if it's not.
All right. So
So,
let me rephrase the question. You're absolutely right. It's you've got to find us a solution. I'm sorry. You got to identify problems that can be solved. And some of the problems that can be solved today could never, it was inconceivable. There was no other way to do it, right? Like, for example, passing data from an email or passing data from a scanned PDF. There was no, right? If it doesn't work with OCR, you got to go in and do it manually, use OCR. That's how you did it. Now with AI, you're solving the same problem much more efficiently, but it's not like, okay, we've got this tool. What can we use it for? So what are your right? So
yes.
what are you finding are the biggest challenges that your users are communicating to you that you look at and think, okay, we can solve that problem today, and particularly because we can leverage the AI skills that we have that we couldn't do before. It was just this wasn't a solvable problem.
Mhm. So it depends on which side of the business we're talking about. If we're on the
Mm.
CompStack one side, where we're selling to the institutional players, for them, like they are extremely obsessed with AI, and they're focused on, like I mentioned before, okay, how do I make sense of my own data? How do I benchmark against the market? So for them, it's around like how do we enable them to benchmark against the market? The most common use case and persona we're pursuing in that regard are asset managers, because
Mm.
that's where they can leverage their internal data, and that's where we can help them with benchmarking. So what we did for them is we built a portfolios tool that lets them see their whole portfolio and see the performance of their portfolio and benchmark it against competitive portfolios. And we're giving them more insights on that. But part of our motivation there is like we show them the tool, but a lot of them want to build it in house. So we'll say, okay, great.
Mm.
here are our APIs. We've got MCPs on top of them. You can connect the
MCP, what
API.
is an MCP? What's an API? Just an API is how you connect two pieces of software, two platforms. An MCP?
Model Context Protocol. So
So it's like, yeah.
it's basically it's like an API, but it's specifically for allowing things like LLMs to be able to query data. So an API would allow your internal system, which is API is an application programming interface. An API would allow your internal system to query data from Comstack or query derivatives of our data and pull it into an internal system.
Mhm.
An MCP is the same thing, but it's specifically designed for an AI functionality where if you build your own internal ChatGPT, you can connect it to our MCP, and when it asks a question, it can pull the answers to those questions, into that tool that you've built.
Okay. All right. So sorry, I interrupted you because there's a lot of acronyms that fly around.
Yes,
I want to be sure that we've
fair
got
enough.
those and understand what they mean.
Yes.
But you were talking about the kind of demands that users have that you're able to resolve now. You look at it, think, oh yeah, we can do that because we have these powerful tools that we didn't have, 2 years ago, or the rate of change these days yesterday. So what kind
Yeah.
of
So
things are
we're
you looking at? Yeah.
Yeah, so the benchmarking against the market for these large enterprise clients, we're doing a forward deployed engineer model. We're coming in, we're helping them see and understand, you know, um, where their limitations are and help them figure out how to make sense of their own data. And then we're also bringing in our data and helping them figure out how to build this internally. Or and
Mm,
part of the inspiration they get on that is from our portfolios tool that's on the platform where they see how we do it. Um,
mm,
so
mm.
that's a key use case. Um,
Do you,
the
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, are you proactive with suggestions as well? In the sense that you said that some people, one of the biggest challenges with new software is not, or new tech capabilities, is not knowing what those capabilities are. I think of Excel. When you first go into Excel, and we all did this 20, 30 years ago, there's all the menus along the top, and there's all the drop downs, and there's a million things in there. And inside of every single button, there's something else that you can do. Even just the formulas, there's a gazillion formulas. So it's hard to know how to use a tool to the extent of its true capabilities because there's so much there. It's better to be shown this is the problem. Here's how to solve it using this tool. Are you proactive in any way with your clients? Hey, look, now we've got these powerful MCPs, and we can ping our data, and we can use AI. This is a challenge that you've had. This is one that we think we can solve for you. Or is it primarily user demand that initiates responses from you?
That's a really good question because I think that, not our clients, they're not always super forward thinking about ways to do it, which is why I kind
Mm,
of mentioned, actually, I'll share my screen here again.
sure.
Um, and this is the portfolios tool that I mentioned, and we're adding,
Right.
more and more to this. But in this case, I'm looking at Prologis's portfolio, and these are, where they have properties and their stats on where those properties are and the average rents and how they're performing. And, this is like showing a juxtaposition of when they have leases expiring versus which rents are above or below market. you
Mm,
know where by building a tool like this, we
mm,
give those clients inspiration where they're like, oh, I've built this internal system for asset management, how can I get some of this into that, right? So
mm,
this is an example where it's like, I don't need to suggest it, I'll just show it to you. And some of the cool
mhm,
things too is that
mm,
with the ability to just like vibe code things, we can just build things very, very quickly. Like we've had APIs for years. We now have a separate site that you can go to where you can demo each of our APIs that we vibe coded that very quickly so that people could try them out, try before you buy kind of thing, which didn't,
So how
wasn't
would
easy to.
somebody do that? How would somebody do that? They come in, they hook it up to their platform. For example, can they
They don't even
access?
have to hook it up. So like it's a
Mm,
website that connects to our APIs
mm.
and shows them the output that they would get if they were to include it, pull it into
Ah,
use it themselves. and so it's a demo environment of those APIs, which like, that was always something we wanted to have, but it would have taken a while for us to build it. So we never got around to it. And now we can build
Ah,
something like that
I
immediately.
see.
Um,
Gosh,
but
that's fascinating.
yeah, so
Huh.
so this is an example of kind of how you inspire people a bit on what they could do, although people do use this on the platform itself. Um, the other thing I wanted to show you here,
Mm-hmm.
and let me, I'll go back to that property we were in before, which was
Okay.
the Spiral. We can go to any property; it doesn't have to be that one, but I'll pull it
Okay.
up. Um, so the Um, we have our competitive set right here, which again, this is actually like older AI. This uses machine learning, but this
Mm-hmm.
uses both supervised and unsupervised machine learning to identify which properties are most comparable to the subject property, and then estimates where the rents would be today in each of those competitive properties, as benchmarked against the subject property. This is not, this is like, 2000s and 2010s AI versus 2025 AI, building this, but that's very useful still today. And then I'll show you, if I go to these market and submarket trends, this is pretty cool. This is an AI market narrative. So we dynamically write market reports using AI. We give the AI all this information on CompStack. We tell it only use CompStack data and only very limited external sources, but any
Mm-hmm.
rent trends and data that you provide use CompStack data. And this is telling you, according to CompStack's latest data, effective rent increased 7.5% quarter over quarter to 86.24 per square foot. It's telling you all about what's going on in the market.
Mm.
Um, you know, Tenant improvement allowance changes, et cetera, et cetera. This is a market report that otherwise you'd have to have a team of people. Um, you'd have to have a team of people, writing these reports,
Analyzing and writing it. Yeah,
and
exactly.
this just does it dynamically. And if you didn't know better, you would think this was written by, a an analyst. And then it references specific deals in
Mm-hmm.
CompStack that support the narrative above. And it also references things that are happening in the news that impact, these things.
Mm. Fascinating. And then can you export this in some format?
Yeah, yeah. So all of this information is exportable. I can
And
do
as
export
it's
to PDF
exported, is
here.
it customizable in any way? Ah, here we go.
Yeah, so this is the export page, and I can choose of all this various property information. What do I want to see? Do I want to see the cover page, the property overview, the market estimates, the competitive set? I can pick and choose what things I want to include, and then it generates, a nice report for you. And I can put my client's logo here. Maybe
Okay, I
I'm
was
doing
going to
this for
say,
Google,
okay, so I can
and
customize it with a logo. I can brand
yeah,
it basically.
yeah. And then I've got all this information that I can share, which just gives you a robust information on this property, all the leases in the property, all the market summary that we talked about,
Mm.
trends in the market, recent leases, all sorts of
Amazing
data
data.
here. Yeah,
Mm.
this is the CMBS information. This is a securitized loan on this
Where are you
property.
grabbing that data? Is that TREP data that you're pulling
Yeah,
in?
that's a partnership with TREP. Yeah,
Mm. Wow,
yeah,
fascinating. All right, so
yeah.
where is this? And okay, anything else that we should see here? Again, just with this particular angle, any other way in here that AI is changing the way that you're delivering data, analyzing data, providing results to clients, having them
That's some of the
integrate?
key stuff for now. There's certainly more in the works, but yeah, for now, this is some of the key
Okay.
highlights.
All right. So if you want to stop sharing, let's wrap up and we'll just chat for a minute. So what is in the
Sure.
works that you can share? Where is CompStack headed in 26? What's on the roadmap?
Sure. Well, the um, on the Comstack One side of the business, we're doubling down on asset managers and supporting them and their decision making.
Mm,
We're AI enabling all of those APIs that I talked about with the MCPs and various ways to help people integrate that data. And then on the exchange side of our platform, I'm not going to give away too much, but we're building a new platform that effectively helps brokers, particularly tenant rep brokers,
mm,
source new leads. So
mm,
effectively, It looks at all of the previous deals that a broker or a brokerage team has done, and it identifies, based off of different signals, what new opportunities they should go after. So, you represented, Facebook in New York. We've identified that Facebook has an upcoming lease expiration in Boston in 2 years. And we also have identified that Facebook is growing by X% per year, and they've announced that they plan to grow their Boston office. This has an extremely high signal strength. You should call them up and tell them about how you've worked with them in the past, and you should work with them in Boston. Or we've seen you've done lots of deals for law firms in this market. Let us tell you about the law firms that are growing the fastest, that have the most space coming up for expiration. So it's a juxtaposition of like market, news in the market, data that Comstack has on what's happening with tenants, and what we know about your past deals as a broker to help you identify where you should go next, and help you win business, because there's nothing that brokers want more than leads.
And that's presumably that is AI generated, that kind of insight.
It's a combination, but a lot of it is, yes.
All right. Well, let's see. Okay. So my audience is largely, they're not, well, there's institutional investors for sure, but I would guess that the majority are probably, mid-level sub-institutional, way above mom and pop, $100 million AUM and above. Probably the sweet spot is high hundreds of millions of AUM. If somebody's interested in using this platform, what is the process for signing up, and how is it priced?
Sure. So the process is, you reach out to us. You could certainly email me. I'm just Michael@Comstack.com. And we connect you with somebody on our sales team who can walk you through, give you a demo, figure out the needs. The pricing is based off of the size and the type of the organization. So we look at, typically like assets under management or loans under management or some other metric to understand size. And we'll say, okay, for a company of your size, you should have, X number of users on the platform. If you want platform access, if you want any, APIs or data feeds or something else, we can figure out how best to price that. And we figure it out and figure out what the right deal is for that organization. But our contracts range from, in the low five figures for maybe like a small user in a non-primary market, up to into the seven figures, for the largest institutional players who might have a lot, in the hundreds of users, or might have an API or data feed or something like that.
And that's when you say that, that's annual, presumably.
Annual, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
And do you sell your data to?
I would love for people to be paying us seven figures monthly.
Well, I wasn't sure. You're in New York, and so I'm not sure
we're not quite there yet, but
Is it monthly or annual? I know. So I had to ask, but anyway.
And I appreciate it.
And do you sell your data to startups? Are you having many AI startups saying, "Hey, listen, we want to hook up our API into you and start processing the data that you have in our own way"?
Constantly, yes.
Really?
We get a lot of reach out from people who want to leverage our data or leverage our APIs. We have technology partnerships where we integrate our data in some capacity with other players. Most of them are not startups. Like we have an integration with Trep and with Green Street and with DealPath. Some that are more established. We do from time to time work with startups, but we're cautious about it.
Why are you cautious?
Because a lot of them haven't raised enough money or made enough money to be able to afford to actually support the contract. And we want to work with companies that will be long-term partners, not ones that are, trying something out and haven't quite figured out their product market fit. There's an investment to working with these companies, and we need to make sure that it's a good use of our time and that it's sticky, and also that it's, that we mitigate risk, right? Because our data is extremely unique. And we need to make sure that we're not doing something that might cannibalize our business in some way.
Yeah, I could imagine that a lot of startups would be doing exactly that, actually, based on what I've seen. processing the data in a very, very different way. Do you find it interesting? We should start wrapping up, but it's just very interesting discussion. Well, let's wrap up. But do you find that you are getting ideas from the startups as they come to you and say, hey, listen, this is what we're doing. This is how we'd like to use your data. Does that trigger ideas for you and think, that's an interesting, because the sense to me that I have the world that we're in is that what will help those succeed who will succeed will be creativity and innovation and being able to think of ways to, just the same way we were talking, to use these tools in a way that have never been conceived of before.
Yeah, certainly, there's definitely insight from talking to these companies. But, not to sound too cynical, you'd be surprised just how many of them come to you with their very, very novel idea that you heard someone pitch almost the exact same one the week before and the week before that.
Yeah.
If I had a nickel for every AI startup that has pitched me that they're going to abstract offering memorandums and tell people whether they should invest in a property based off of, abstracting the OMs, I would be very rich because there's a new one of those companies popping up every day. And by the way, it's a clever idea. I just don't know who's going to win because everybody's doing it.
Yeah, it's commodity. It's commoditized. I'm totally with you on that. I see these wows, things that just wow me, as I said at the beginning. And then I see it again the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day. I thought, it's actually not that difficult.
That's okay. And I don't want to be discouraging to startups. If multiple people have the same idea, it's probably because it's a good idea. But the challenge is it's hard for me to know who's going to be the winner. In that regard, I think it's a good chance that it'll work, but the question is who makes it work. So we'll see.
Michael, let's wrap up. Michael Mandel, you are, I'm just guessing, I should have this in front of me, CEO and founder of CompStak. Yes. I got it right? Okay. Yes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right. That was Michael Mandel, founder and CEO of CompStak. Thank you so much for joining me today, Michael. It's actually fascinating to see the kind of data that you've got and the way that users can interact with the data that you had. I didn't actually realize how extensive your database was and how extensive were the solutions that you provide to users. I am looking forward very much indeed to staying in touch and seeing what else evolves and develops in the coming months as AI takes an even stronger hold on the world of commercial real estate, as we know it will do. Thank you for joining me. And thank you to dear viewers for joining me today. It was fascinating, wasn't it? Actually, probably the first thing that blew me away, I had no idea that CompStak crowdsourced information. Isn't that interesting? Fascinating. Gotta love that. Okay, thanks for joining me. If you've not subscribed to my newsletter, please do so at gowercrowd.com. You can also go to the podcast page there for today's episode. There'll be links to Michael, to his website, and also a subscribe button to my newsletter. Go ahead and sign up for that. I am delivering tactics, techniques, and immediately valuable, actionable uses of various AI tools, LLMs, but also making introductions to companies like CompStak for you all there. It's totally free. You can always unsubscribe, but all there at gowercrowd.com. Okay, that's all I've got for you this week. Thank you so much for joining me. And until next time, this is Adam Gower signing off.